Welcome to Garcia's. My name is Rabbi Dan Ain. All right, my name is Rabbi Dan Ain. It's great to see so many of you here for the Friday Night Jam before the Chris Robinson Brotherhood show. We're psyched to be here. The Friday Night Jam is an opportunity for us to get together on a Friday evening at the end of the work week, meditate a little bit, breathe, and then hopefully we're going to get an opportunity to hear a little bit from Chris about the connection between his music, his spirituality, and the idea of community building. I mean, look at us. We have here quite the community together, so hopefully we're going to share a little bit of an experience as we welcome in the Sabbath. And the first thing that we're going to do is call up Sydney Rose. Sydney Rose is our meditation leader. Our organization is called Because Jewish. We call it Because Jewish because we have no other agenda other than to get together like at an evening like this and have a great time. And Sydney teaches meditation at Dharma Punks NYC in the Bowery, and she's going to lead us in a little bit of a meditation to close out the week and to lead us into the Sabbath.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, everybody. So usually my job is to take you from the week into the sacred space of the weekend, but I feel like one thing that's awesome about this crowd is it feels like you are all very much in the weekend. So I am going to do my best to just bring us into a little bit of focus and awareness. So if you are seated, find a comfortable seated position. We're only going to meditate for a very few minutes tonight. And when you feel ready, bring your eyes to close. We'll take these first few moments just to really take in all of the information that's making itself known to you right now through your senses. So your feet may be on the floor, the sounds in the room, the sensations of your breathing. And the topic of our conversation tonight is tuning into your own individuality, your ability to make decisions from your authentic self. So if it feels authentic to you right now, you might bring one hand to your heart and one to your belly. And just take a minute to notice what's making itself known to you. What thoughts or emotions you're bringing into this room. What your intention is for being here. We're moving from this very individual experience into the experience of community. So the offering for you tonight, if you want to stay in this meditation as we move through the evening, is that even as we begin to open our eyes and start to shift our attention out into the room once again, that you hold your breath, hold your body, hold your heart in your mind. That we keep some part of us aware of ourselves even as we enter this communal space. So take one last deep mindful breath. And when you feel ready, open your eyes and have a beautiful night, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sydney. Unfortunately, because of the fire rules and regulations, we are unable to light the candles, so I've turned a couple of Shabbat candles on over here. The Friday Night Jam is a program that is run in collaboration with my organization, Because Jewish, and Relix magazine. With editor-in-chief Mike Greenhouse, and we've been doing it for about 2.5 years to try to figure out what is that spiritual center or that feeling that a lot of us feel when we come to a concert like this. What is the community that gets formed around a space like this and on an evening like tonight, and how does that tap into the deeper parts of ourselves that we might not get a chance to do in the regular weekday? Now, we call it the Friday Night Jam. I'm just going to tell you real quickly why we call it the Friday Night Jam. The expression a jam session is about 90 years old. It was started in 1927 in Chicago at the Three Deuces Speakeasy. And so there were two types of sessions. There was the bread and butter session, and that was the session that you did up above board to make your money. And then there was the jam session, and they called it the jam session because it was all jam. It was all sweetness. And apparently, Bing Crosby went down into that cellar at Three Deuces and began to jam. And apparently the African-American jazz players and the white jazz players wouldn't play together except when they went down into the cellar to jam it out together. And the issue with Bing Crosby was he could not clap on the 2 and the 4. Just was incapable of doing it. He clapped only on the 1 and the 3. And so some of the jazz guys said to him, "Hey man, you're jamming up the beat." And that's where a jam session, the story for the jam session actually comes from that. And so with so many of our forces in our lives, on social media, on technology, on our email, in the news, trying to divide us up, trying to create the differences between us, we want to create a safe space where we can have a jam, where we can share different ideas that we might have about faith and spirituality, about music and about community, come from our own individualistic perspective, and be able to share it. So that's why we call it a jam. Now, we do it on a Friday night because, in my tradition, for 6 days out of the week, God did his bread and butter work, making the universe, setting the moons and the stars and the earth. And on the 7th day, it says that God rested. God created for all of these things that are in the universe that we see now to come together and to concentrate on them and just step back from the rest of the week. Now, I know a lot of us are doing our bread and butter work all the time now, right? We're inundated with messages. We never turn our phones off. How often do we get a chance to stop and relax and jam a little bit? That's why coming to an event like this is so holy, because it provides us with a space not to have to fix the whole world or solve all of the problems, but where we can come together, we can let go of all of those earthly pursuits that we've been having and connect to the people around us and to the spirit together. And we thought, who better to do it with than tonight with Chris Robinson? And I found, woo! So on the Chris Robinson Brotherhood website, they talk about the new album is something of a magic spell. And now that it's been cast, it's time for services to resume in the psychedelic church of the CRB. That means they'll be hitting your local rock and roll temple in their ongoing mission to make the holy profane and the profane holy. So pour a little wine, light up an offering, and get ready for the unexpected. So let us all say, Amen. Woo. So really quickly, if you have a drink on you, hold it up, and we have the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Pri Hagafen. Amen.
Amen.
And Mike, you have the motzi right there.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And let's welcome Chris Robinson. All right, we're gonna pass around some bread here for everyone to enjoy while we speak.
And before we get started,
yeah.
I just got my 23andMe back. I'm 17.9% Ashkenaz Jew.
Nice, yeah.
Go team.
Mishpacha.
Well, that's awesome. And this, as Dan said, this series is about a lot of things, and most importantly, it is about creating sacred space and a spiritual community. And we are here in a true rock and roll church, or a rock and roll temple, the Capitol Theater. Now, Chris, could you start by giving us a little background and kind of your spiritual community, where you grew up in? You mentioned you're a percentage Ashkenazi Jew, you're a percentage Christian. What's your background?
My background would be always having in the back of my mind that there was some sort of other cosmic force that really didn't feel that the dogmatic sort of the man part of it, the control part of it. As a young child growing up in the South, I would wonder, my main thing was if all of the things that they're trying to push down my throat as a young person in the South in more of a Christian context was true, then why is there so much pain and suffering, which of course, would be in the first step toward enlightenment in more of an Eastern tradition, Right. So those kind of like really deep quandaries, though, would really always, because I think in a strange way, I was whether it's my dyslexia or whatever, my weird place, or just, I could see all the magic, you know, I could see music especially was a connection, a multi-dimensional, a dynamic connection with our most primal early selves and our most far-reaching future selves, just in terms of, you know, you remove technology and things from, and which are just tools from the equation, we're in the same emotional vibrations that we've always had. We're in the same, you know, the same, from the joyous of joys to the depth and depravity of experience, that has never changed. And I think if music is a conduit for, you know, again, if you believe in vibrational, if this reality is just or this dimensional reality is just a vibrational agreement that we've all made in some sort of conscious and subconscious way, that would be my other belief system would be that music is the answer, you know, that like music, why are rhythms and why are harmonic things, and then you add mythology and poetry and the image to it all. Why has that always been a part of us? Why do we weep and wail at loss and we dance and sing when we come together? You know.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak to a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, and he says that when the sad movie comes on in the music score, when the sad music comes up in the movie, the smart people cry and the not smart people cry. It has nothing to do with intellect, that there is some vibration that the music is able to just pierce right through you. Did you rebel? I'm wondering, did you rebel from your religious, I mean, how did that manifest itself, realizing that those values weren't your values?
It's tough because you grow up in a place like the Deep South and, you know, I'm 51 years old in a few weeks, so I came up in that sort of modern or postmodern, like born-again Christian sort of thing. Like, oh, I have, you know, you could fuck over your friends and family, you can steal, cheat, and lie, but no, I don't have to deal with any of you because he gave me the green light, you know what I mean? And that just used to really bother me because that's not cosmic consciousness, you know what I mean? That's a loophole. That's legalese almost, you know? In the same way that I'm proud that I'm from Atlanta for one reason. I grew up in a city they said was too busy to hate, although that's obviously very broad and naive. But I think the idea of that, of seeing like what kind of fear and what kind of ignorant sort of construct that the average Southern conservative Christian ideal was completely against how I felt as a person with an open heart and a kind of mind and stuff. And to be honest, I was always interested in history, always interested in prehistory, always interested in metaphysical interest, philosophical interest, and you know, like I said, just if Jesus was a real person, if his teachings are to be taken for, you know, what other people who weren't there said they were, all I know is I'm no theologian, but I don't really remember so much hate. Right, you know, like, and that was always like a weird part of it, and it's most simple.
It's around conformity. I think, you know, there's an expression the priest Ivan Ilyich used to say that the corruption of the best is the worst. And the way that certain things are corrupted, and the idea of people getting together, sharing a glass of wine, lighting up some candles, and sharing the things that mattered most, that's religion. That should be the best.
But I agree. But I think what we see today in its most like orthodoxy is like a deep form of perversion in a sense. And then I understand the safety in that, especially in like a more ancient context. Yeah, exactly. Safety in numbers. And I truly understand that in an anthropological sort of way as well. And I also get I mean, for me, it was always, too, what is at its base, you know? Who is it benefiting for people to control you through being fearful and being ignorant? And that's it. There's no other thing. You know, it's how you keep people in line. It's how, in the same, I mean, and I'm just weird enough to think we still live under this Roman construct, you know? Philip K. Dick talks about, you know, opening the door and this purple light hits him. That's the vast active learning intelligence system, and like he has all these sort of quasi-religious, drugged out sort of things. But one of the things in the trilogy at the end is that he sees Rome as a hologram almost over Southern California in the early 70s. And I think you could take that even further and see it exactly as us as westernized people, which is a whole nother basis of like philosophical and religious argument is, how many Western Buddhists do you know who still miss the point of Buddhism, that you don't need somebody like in a Christian context or someone patting you on the head and saying, good Buddhist, you're doing a good job. Right. I mean, that's what we go to.
No, you see that people go on social media and they put something on social media, but if it doesn't get liked a certain number of times, then they think that thought has no value at all whatsoever. And what I admire about you and, in the interviews that I've read of you and in your work is you're decidedly individualistic. You're not going to take anybody's opinion about your music or about your life. And I think for a lot of people that's hard. I think because there's such a hive mind out there, it's hard to connect to who you are deep down inside. I'm a rabbi. I like to believe religion can help you connect to that instead of imposing it on you.
I completely agree. But then again, in where my belief system, my religion is poetry. My religion is, I've removed it out of a certain context. Maybe that's, the base of being a dyslexic artist and being someone, I've never thought of it as being, aggressively, like you said, like when you grow up in a place, I guess when I was younger, you feel some sort of anger or something. Oh, yeah. Because you want answers and you feel powerless in a sense of the system itself, and how it manifests in your daily life. About when you're in the 80s, they're still banning books and like weird, European cinema that I'm not allowed to watch because some person who's never even known about those books. You know what I mean? Like,
what are you allowed to say on college campuses these days anymore?
Yeah.
But the other
it's great. It's really wild. I mean, again, status rules the day, and I see some connection with status. I mean, now we're really getting off the thing, but 400 years from now, the one thing they're going to say about this whole thing we're living through right now is that the president of their country, after this traumatic event, which was 9/11, our president at the time just said, hey, it's cool, go shop. That's what he fucking said. And it's like, no, it's not cool. And shopping isn't. I do retail therapy. Well, that's fucking bullshit too. I'm not saying we're capitalists. We live in this system. I get it. We like nice. I understand that. But then there's a level where it's completely. Now that becomes the orthodoxy. Now there's great perversion in that, And I don't know if we even. Sometimes you don't even have the time to stop and like think about how that's like all of a sudden a part of who we are every day.
Yeah. No, I think one of the most amazing things about your music, though, is it's so individualistic, but at the same time, it owes so much to American roots music, whether that's blues, gospel, folk. Can you talk a little bit about, incorporating some of those kind of, in a lot of ways, very dogmatic styles into this, beautiful California system?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the nature of, hopefully, something that's dynamic in any art or any creative endeavor. But it is funny, the other day, I was speaking to a friend, and although, there's all this stuff. And it's just as much the books and the film and the art, all of it. But I don't know if you would put this together, but I thought at a certain time in my life, when a real formative, like, influential time in music, the three things that I've still carried around with me the most of all are Graham Parsons, Syd Barrett, and Alex Chilton.
Interesting. Wow.
And it's really funny because you would not necessarily, the Graham Parsons part I think would be the most obvious one, but like Syd Barrett is like such a unique and only made a few things, but that kind of crazy occult psychedelic magic, that little piece of madness that's beyond beautiful and strange is important. In the same way, Alex Chilton is a Southern person who like his angst and depression in his early career manifest as like this Southern kid who was like obsessed with like all this kind of English music. So when I hear Big Star, it's as southern sounding as the Allman Brothers because of the South I grew up in. It's different than the one if you grow up north or whatever, you think the South is all like one thing, but it's not. And all of our time and stuff that you think about. And Alex Chilton wrote all these heartbreaking, beautiful, melancholy songs. And like that's still like I'm still obsessed with sad songs in my own way. So it's funny how those, and then Graham as the person who probably put the idea of cosmic American music, in there, or at least, was the guy who named it or something when I was a teenager, because I always felt rock and roll is the great bastard child of everything. If I played blues, I'd be a blues guy. If I played country, we would never have met. I'd be some asshole living in Nashville. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But you know what I'm saying? If I did one thing, it would be one thing. And I love all those things, but put them all together, and it's rock and roll music, and that's a freedom.
Well, it's really interesting. The three people you mentioned all had, in a lot of ways, creative peaks before they were 25. I mean, Alex Chilton wrote The Letter when he was 16, and you obviously have Syd Barrett and Graham Parsons who were in their 20s when they, either stopped playing music professionally. Do you think there's something about kind of the naivety of being young and creating this kind of dynamic rock and roll experience?
It's funny because as you get older, your perspective of that time changes. And I remember the day I turned 22 and hadn't already made records that people knew. You know what I mean? I was like, it's over, you suck, you son of a bitch, it's fucking over. You'll never do it, no one cares. Banging your head against the wall, because of the people before you have no, it's weird, it's art. There's no, now I don't know what it would be like for young people now, but it was, we had to kind of find your own way, and then that was the beautiful part, though,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about your philosophical approach, you're figuring out who you are, where your place is in this universe, and then when you're 21, you become an internationally famous rock and roll star. How does that impact your sense of self? How do you find your bearings? How do you make sense of that?
Well, all lead singers in rock bands have low self-esteem. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have worn those stupid outfits. I mean, to be honest with you, I think part of it, and this is real, you want something so bad, and and then boom, then it happens, and I'm pretty lucky because around that same time is when I started really taking psychedelic drugs. And I think maybe everyone in my life at the time has probably, at that time, I should say, I was always problematic because of the real independent spirit. You call it bohemian or being a hippie or a freak or a head or whatever. That was always my trip, and I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't very savvy, but you didn't have to be really savvy to understand, okay, I'm 23, 24 years old. We just sold a record that sold 6 million copies, and these people that we're in business with do this all the time. This is completely alien for me. And the first thing that I'm really sensitive to is no one really ever talks about music. They just talk about money and being famous and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no one's ever going to talk about the shit I'm into. I'm waiting to hear it from someone, and it never comes up. So,
except for, of course, that guy back there.
Yeah, of course. Well, artists are not there. Part of Jerry's fucking blues, part of his trouble are the exact same things that trouble all sensitive people. And when you get in a situation where money becomes more important than everything else, it hurts. At least for someone like myself.
How do you deal with the anger? The anger where you have this art.
The Black Crowes were. That's why the CRB puts out the vibes we do. This Black Crowes were built on that anger and that dysfunction, and that was, again, divide and conquer. It was a way to keep young men, all worked up, and the music was born of something else too, a different. I told my mom not to vacuum while we were in here. Ma, we'll clean it up later. I told Curtis not to eat popcorn in the fucking TV room.
She's just really proud of you. She wants to be here in some spray. Yeah.
The anger was in the music, and at the system. You know, I was always mad at that. I just didn't, and I was naive too, thinking like, oh, like I was teasing, but I was naive. And then everything changes with the people that you thought you knew the most, because you can't control anyone else's perspective. You know what I'm saying? And then everyone's little petty jealousies and fucking, it all spills out, But but what is funny, when I was saying about the psychedelic experience was, at that same time, and it's not 1969, or I'm not Germany in 1972, it's me in the early 90s. And when I started to blow my mind a little bit, it really helped me change my perspective and always keep this place close to me that's in theogen-driven sort of, you would say a non-reality. To me, it felt more real than most other things that I had been given or presented, that always sort of gently reassured me in the goddess sort of mother way that if you can get through this, it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? And I think that thing kind of came to a huge head with an ayahuasca experience I had about 15 years ago, and that changed. That was it. Nothing has ever been the same. To be honest.
Do you remember the first song that you wrote that you feel was really impacted by your psychedelic experiences?
Well, I would say if people want to know the difference between what Shake Your Moneymaker sounds one way, and then the next record sounds a little more like crooked,
Yeah.
or a little more askew. What happened? And I think those things aren't really tangible. And the other strange thing about, I just was having this conversation with someone too recently. I remember my very first psychedelic experience. I waited a long time. I was still in college in 1986. And with a bunch of friends in Atlanta, and we all, took psilocybin, and it was like a, beautiful, unbelievable time that I had worked myself up to about what happens if I never come back, whatever. But the next day, on Monday, I went back to university. I was at Georgia State University, and as I walked down the street, I just remember watching the sun kind of play through these grates by this building. And on the street, the way it looked, and it hit me that I've always kind of been looking at things in a psychedelic way, whether these substances were being used or not, and that really helps too.
So I guess it's innate. So we have people that come to our services, they do whatever they want to do. They have these ecstatic experiences, then they show up at work on Monday, and all of those insights slowly begin to drip away because they don't have a practice or something that they do to remind them, hey, the world is a little bit different than the world. Do you have a practice?
I'm the luckiest. We get to defy space and time every night. We get to play music.
Round of applause for that.
I know for us, and if you're interested in this and you come to this place, and I think the majority of bands that we all know and love and that we're all friends with, I think that music has always been searching for something more than just putting on the show or worship me or, like Showbiz Trip, and that's cool too. Don't get me wrong. Billy Joel's an amazingly popular man. He's incredible.
I'm from Long Island, so
well, we're not blaming you for Billy Joel. I just brought up that he does a different kind of thing. He's happy. He's happy. He's drunk and he's happy and he's. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying. So there's it's different and it should be different. That's what. Again, how lucky am I? Everyone thought I was completely mentally ill to not do what the Black Crowes do. You make lots of money. It's big hit songs. It's a whole different thing. And I'm like, I understand that. But I am so unhappy. And it's not the audience, it's nothing else. It's just you know what, man, this thing has run its course. And it's so funny because we get addicted to that money and you get addicted to a certain lifestyle. It's like oil, like a nation or like anything else. And, one of the the easiest thing and the hardest thing in the world is to say, I'm going to put a stop to this. Right. Then you find out pretty quick, people get pretty pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what do you mean? We shut up the food truck and there's no more hamburgers? Right. You know, like, or whatever it could be. And then people say a lot of mean stuff and like, you know, like, and they say a lot of stuff that's not true because they want everyone to think like, you know, fuck him, you know, and fuck me too. I get it. It's cool. I mean, you know.
But you need a thick skin. I mean, you have to develop a thick skin to be able to sort of wade your way through that and say, you know.
You didn't get far looking like this without thick skin. I mean, how far can you coast?
I'm into that.
How far can you coast on charm? You know, all the way to Westbury.
In terms of life changes, you know, you moved to California, and at least the first. At least, you know, the first half of this conversation felt like kind of like a tourism bureau to go visit California. You want to be free, you want to be by the water, all this stuff like that. At what point did you realize that California is where you wanted to start your Brotherhood and go out there and have this communal experience?
You know, I tried to do, the Brotherhood is the result of like all this kind of sacrifice and all this kind of these ideas. And, you know, like the Black Crowes were my band. I had an idea. You guys want to be in a band? It's going to be like this. And as that ran its course and became something that was out of my control, I was like, if I had to do it over again, how could we do it? And the weird thing about the Black Crowes, again, everything's like a paradox. So, you know, that band just went, and then you had to deal with like, whoa. I was like, if I had it to do over again, it would be nice to have like a trajectory, you know, like could we, you know, we don't have to pull off anything that we don't want to be. We don't have to answer to anything except ourselves. And that's why we started with no record, no recordings, no pictures, no interviews, just go play and play and play and play. And then the next time a little bit more, you know. But the one thing about the CRB is, you know, without these guys, you know, again, it's everyone's collective psychic focus, you know. It's everyone is talented enough they could be doing other things and making much more money. Everyone has their own thing. But when we get together, and like we've been making these records, and you know, I've never been in a situation, people don't believe me, we've never had an argument. I mean, it's 7 years of fucking living on the bus. I mean, we just don't, you know, and like we play and I can write something and if they're excited, if it's not finished, next thing you know, Neil's like, I got something. And then next thing you know, Adam's got something. And the next thing you know, we have a song and that song means something to our story and to hopefully everyone's story who's a part of our scene, you know.
Yeah, does a community grow out of that? So the CRB has an ethos to it. It's not done for any agenda as opposed to
it's the other part about being super free is we're not bound by the shackles of nostalgia, which is kind of a different thing too. If you think about it, I'm not beating a but I say it like this all the time, you know. There's like a guy sat next to me on the airplane, and he was like, yeah, I never really heard your music, you know. I really like this other band, and I listened to them, you know. My buddy died in a car crash, and that song was on when I heard the news. And I was like, okay. I hear that story a lot, which is the sad one. But then I hear, too, like, first time I, had oral sex, you were on the radio, you know. So the thing is, so fucking play that one, all right? I don't even remember what it was. You're in the fucking Counting Crows, right, dude? You know? No, sir. Pull your pants on and wash your hands. But, I mean, which is cool, but, you know, the CRB, the kind of rad thing that we've had and that makes it free to us is, you know, I have a line in a new song that I do my dreaming running down the road, and that's what this is. We're building our mythology as this is happening, and I think the audience that's been with us from the little gigs, and now people come now. Yeah, I mean, and it's also, it's just nice group of people. And like in California, you know, we're really, that's our main hub, you know. We'll play 3 big nights at the Fillmore, and I mean, we can just walk around, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, almost everyone there. it's so rad. I can DJ, and everyone's like, hey. You know, like I can. If you had to go like get a lighter from your friend, you could just walk out, and no one's gonna be like, "Can I take a picture with you?" They're just like, "Hey, CR, what's up?" You know, it's like super mellow, and that's what I'm so proud. I love that. You know, like I was. It's been such a different, completely unique and different experience than the weird, unique experience I had before. You know.
One more question before I think we're going to take a couple questions from the audience. You know, as you're a lyricist, you're a writer. That's been one of the core themes since before you even played music. You know, when you're in this communal setting, do you find that your lyrics are maybe more broad or metaphorical versus personal, or is it just depend on the song?
I think it depends on the song, and you know, I'm such a weirdo, man. There's two things I never think about: singing and writing lyrics. I just do them, you know. I never think about it. Everything else you can get to, you know. I just feel. I feel I have a certain style of lyric. You know what I mean? Like I like juxtaposition, and you know, I like all the. But all the weird little characters and little symbols and things all pretty much kind of mean something that has happened or happening, or it's something that I told this lady the other day. She was like, "Well, you write so many songs. I mean, how can you think of things to write about?" And I said, "Well, I flew here today on an airplane, and there was a girl sitting next to me who had 3 hats in her lap." And she goes, "Well, that sounds like a song." And I went, "Fucking exactly." The fuck are you talking about? So, did you sit next to a chick with 3 hats on her lap? Well, I did. And when that's in a song, she can't sue me. You know. You guys see this?
So
Someone in the gray Pinto. There's a kangaroo locked in your car.
who do you want to collaborate with? If you could choose one person that you could collaborate with, who would it be, and what would you perform?
You know, I would love to be in the studio with D'Angelo.
Wow, nice, yeah.
He would have his shirt on, I hope. No, he's one of my favorite artists. You know, I think we could do something.
Yeah,
funky.
you know what you would perform? Something funky.
Something funky. Yeah, you know, but I might be a little too funky for him. I don't know.
This other question says, "Do you guru?"
Only when I know when it's safe, you know. Don't guru around the pool when it's wet, you know. You can hurt yourself. But when you're in the teepee in Northern California and it's cold outside, guru your ass off, all right?
So we have one question that
We have one thing before we leave, though.
Well, no,
Free the illegal plants, all of them. Free the illegal plants.
Well,
They're plants. They're illegal. They're fucking plants.
That brings me to my
Please, Rabbi.
It brings me to my next question. No.
Tell me, who knew about the plants?
It's kosher, by the way. The rabbinic authority in Israel.
One
has
thing I
said
want to know.
The plants are kosher.
One thing I want to know is, and this is true, Jewish people are not on. You know, there's not more of them. And, you know, the thing is, I'm not really Jewish because my dad is Jewish, not my mom. And his dad, well, what I'm saying is they love shiksas, these people. but maybe you should change the rules and let some dad Jews in, you know?
I'm into that.
You know, let a couple of the father Jews in. You need some numbers, you know? Like, I'm ready to get in. Coach, let me in.
I'll get back to you on that. So the one question we ask all the guests who come to the Friday Night Jam, and it is related to your comment about plants or psychedelic, or might not be, which is can you just share one moment in your life in which you have felt a keen sense of awareness that you were in the presence of a higher power or the creator? Has there been any one moment? I
think anytime you really can get into your scene, you know, that first feeling that overtakes all of us, that is that feeling. I mean, to me, that's like the connection of.
What do you mean by scene?
like when it comes on, like that you're a part of the interconnectedness of all living things in this, in this dimensional like realm. But I mean,
Remember
not
where
to
you
be,
were? Did you
I
when you
don't-
first had that insight?
The very first time
Yeah.
but if not to be too crazy, but my ayahuasca experience was so deeply profound and life-changing. But at one point, and we all have our shit. We all have our stuff with our parents and how we grew up and what it means and blah, blah, blah. I was a million miles away on a inner planet all my own with whatever being it is. You can call it whatever you want. I felt it was a real feminine energy. So I would think of, the goddess in these terms. And I sat there on this beach under the stars, and whatever entity or being it was gently stroked my face and my hair and said, you don't ever have to deviate from your path. It's completely, you're fine. Like, you're loved and it'll be fine. Everything will be fine. And even though that seems like an easy thing to do, it's still, I'm trying so hard to stay on that path, and I'm trying so hard to, because there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of hate, and we see a lot of brutality and stuff that's hard to deal with right now. And if our band and our poetry and our songs and our love and our little community, we can put one little pebble in the water that goes bloop, 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 then that's enough,
Amen.
Let's go do some of that tonight. Thank you, Chris.
Woo!
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Everyone should stick around and see Chris in the
Everybody
Brotherhood
stick around.
right across
Thank you
over
so
there.
much, Chris Rob.